I remember the exact moment the world tilted. It was a Friday afternoon, December 13th, my wife Estelle's birthday. For 40 years, on this exact day, I'd walked into Ashford Flowers to buy her a dozen red roses. It was a tradition, a small, predictable comfort in a life that, at 68, I thought had finally settled into quiet contentment. I'd built Mercer Climate Solutions from a single truck into a regional HVAC empire, retired 5 years ago, and handed the reins to my son-in-law, Brent. I thought I'd earned my peace, but peace, I was about to learn, was a luxury I couldn't afford. The moment the shop bell chimed, announcing my arrival, Floyd Ashford, my best friend of 53 years, looked up from trimming stems. His face, usually ruddy and calm, went the color of old snow. The scissors clattered to the tile floor. In 4 quick strides, faster than a man his 69 years had any right to move, he was at my side, his fingers digging into my jacket. "Floyd, what in the world?" I started, but he cut me off, his breath hot against my ear, a frantic whisper. "No matter what you hear, don't come out. Trust me, please." Before I could even process his words, he was pulling me past buckets of carnations and lilies, around the counter, through a door marked "Employees Only." The back room smelled of cardboard, damp soil, and decades of dust. He shoved me between stacked boxes of ribbon and a shelf of ceramic vases, into a space barely wide enough for my shoulders. "Don't make a sound," he hissed through the crack in the door, his voice barely audible. "I mean it." The lock clicked. I crouched in the darkness, my knees protesting, my heart hammering against my ribs. Floyd, the man who'd faced down armed suspects in his 22 years as a private investigator, who'd remained stoic through his divorce, his daughter's accident, the death of his business partner, was terrified. What could possibly make him this scared in his own flower shop? Then, the doorbell chimed again. 2 sets of footsteps crossed the shop floor. One, light and familiar, the click of heels I'd heard on my kitchen tile for 4 decades. The other, heavier, deliberate, the expensive shoes of a man who thought he owned the world. "The roses are lovely this year, Mrs. Mercer." Floyd's voice, too smooth, too practiced, the voice he used to use on suspects he was tailing. "Always a pleasure. Shopping for the party tonight?" "Just browsing." Estelle, my wife. Her heels clicked closer to my hiding spot. Through the crack in the door, I could see her silhouette, her silver hair, the cardigan she always wore on Fridays. "These red roses are beautiful," she said, her voice carrying without shouting, a habit from 30 years of teaching 2nd grade. A little tacky and outdated. Exactly what he likes. Something cold slid down my spine. Tacky? For 40 years, I'd thought tacky and outdated meant beloved and familiar. He's always appreciated classic arrangements. Floyd's voice stayed level, but I could hear the edge underneath. "Classic," Estelle laughed, soft and low. "That's one word for it." The second set of footsteps moved closer. A man's voice, smooth as polished steel. "Floyd, we need to talk about tonight's delivery timeline." Brent, my son-in-law. 40 years old, Harvard Business School smile, CEO of the company I'd built with my own hands and stupidly handed over 5 years ago. Thinking family meant safety. "Timeline's all set, Mr. Townsend." Floyd's voice had gone flat, emotionless. The tone I remembered from his PI days when he was lying to Marks. "Everything's ready." "Good." Brent's shoes stopped inches from the storage room door. "What about tonight?" Estelle asked, her voice dropping lower. "Once he signs, everything will belong to us. The paperwork's clean, simple transfer of assets for estate planning purposes." "He won't even read it before he signs." "He never does," Estelle said. The floor tilted. My hand found the wall, pressing against rough concrete to keep from falling. Finally, there was something in that word. Relief, satisfaction, the sound of someone reaching the end of a very long wait. My wife. The woman who'd stood beside me in a courthouse in 1982, wearing a borrowed dress and holding discount flowers. The woman who'd gripped my hand in the delivery room when our daughter was born. The woman I'd bought red roses for every December 13th, because that was the day she'd told me yes. "Tacky." "Make sure he's in a good mood tonight," Brent said, his voice already fading toward the door. Everything depends on the signature. We're running out of time. He's always in a good mood on my birthday. Estelle's heels clicked away. It's pathetic, really. Predictable. The doorbell chimed. Silence flooded the shop, like water filling a drowning man's lungs. I sat in the darkness, my back against boxes of wire and foam, the scent of roses drifting through the crack in the door. The same roses I'd bought every year, the same flowers I'd thought meant something. 40 years of December 13ths. 40 years of thinking tacky and outdated meant beloved and familiar. Tacky, that single word. 40 years. The lock clicked. Light spilled into the storage room, too bright after the darkness. Floyd stood in the doorway, not panicked anymore, just tired. The kind of tired that settles into bone after carrying weight you can't put down. "I've known for 7 months," he said quietly, his voice steady. Now the voice of someone who's rehearsed this moment in his head 100 times. "And I've gathered enough evidence to ruin both of them." The navy blue notebook was 2 inches thick, spiral bound, and when Floyd placed it on the small kitchen table between us, it landed with the weight of something that had been waiting a long time to be opened. He'd led me from the storage room to the back kitchen, a cramped space with a coffee maker and a table barely big enough for 2. His hands shook as he measured grounds, filled the pot. The door opened. A woman with silver hair, pulled back in a bun, stepped through, took one look at our faces, and stopped. "I'll mind the front," Dorothy Ashford said quietly. 67, married to Floyd for 40 years. She'd learned long ago when not to ask questions. The door closed. Floyd set a mug in front of me, coffee I wouldn't drink. 7 months ago, Brent came to me, Floyd began, his voice low, his eyes fixed on the steaming mug. He said he needed to arrange flowers for a secret admirer. He wanted to send them to Estelle. Floyd paused, letting the implication hang in the air. He said you were getting forgetful, that you were losing your edge. He wanted to make sure Estelle felt appreciated, just in case. I felt a cold dread spread through me. Just in case of what? Just in case you needed to be managed. Floyd pushed the notebook across the table. He wanted me to help him create a paper trail, fake invoices, doctored receipts, all designed to make it look like you were mismanaging your finances, making reckless investments. He was trying to get me declared incompetent. The words were a bitter taste in my mouth. To take over my estate. Floyd nodded. But I knew you, Harland. I knew you better than that. So I started digging. Not for Brent, but for you. He tapped the notebook. This is everything. Bank statements, emails, recorded conversations, enough to put them both away for a very long time. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations, strange looks, Brent's sudden interest in my health, Estelle's subtle nudges about retirement homes, her insistence on handling my financial documents. It all clicked into place, a horrifying mosaic of betrayal. "My daughter Vivica," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "She hasn't spoken to me in 2 years. Brent told her I was having an affair, that I was leaving Estelle for a younger woman." Floyd's jaw tightened. He planted evidence. Fake texts, burner phone records. He knew Vivica would never forgive you for that. He needed her out of the picture so he could isolate you. The pain of that revelation was a physical blow. Not only had they tried to steal my life, but they had stolen my daughter from me. My granddaughter, Wren, who I hadn't seen in months. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Floyd looked at me, his gaze steady. "We get them tonight, at the party." The plan was simple, audacious, and utterly terrifying. Floyd had already contacted Detective Garrett, a former colleague from his PI days, now a respected federal agent. She and her team would be positioned discreetly around my house, waiting for my signal. The evidence in Floyd's notebook, combined with a carefully orchestrated confrontation, would be enough to bring them down. But first, I had to play a role. The oblivious, aging husband celebrating his wife's birthday, completely unaware of the viper's nest he was sitting in. I called Vivica. Her voice, hesitant at first, then filled with a raw, aching pain, was a balm to my wounded soul. I told her everything. The betrayal, the evidence, the plan. She cried, a torrent of tears for 2 lost years. for the lies that had poisoned our relationship. "I'll be there," she said, her voice firm, resolute. "For you and for Ren." That evening, as guests arrived, the house buzzed with a false cheer. Estelle, radiant in a sapphire dress, played the gracious hostess. Brent, impeccably dressed, moved through the crowd, a shark in a tailored suit, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. Lyle, their lawyer, a man with a perpetually smug expression, hovered nearby, a silent accomplice. Vivica arrived late, alone, her eyes searching for mine. When she found them, a flicker of understanding passed between us, a silent promise. We slipped into my study, away from the prying eyes and ears. "I missed you, Dad," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I missed you too, sweetheart." It was all I could say. 2 years of manufactured silence, broken by a shared betrayal. "Floyd said you have a plan," she said, wiping her face. "I do, but I need your help." I explained the signal, a double touch to my left ear. "When I give you the signal, you take Ren upstairs immediately. Get her out before things happen that she's too young to see." Vivica nodded, her jaw set. "What's going to happen?" "Justice." A knock on the study door. Brent's voice, smooth and insidious, came through. "Everything okay in there?" Vivica straightened, wiped her face, and looked at me with something I hadn't seen in 2 years. "Trust. We should go back," she said. I opened the door. Brent stood in the hallway, Lyle directly behind him, too close. "Hey, just catching up," I said, keeping my voice light. "Haven't had a real conversation with my daughter in a while." Brent's eyes moved between us, calculating, suspicious. "What were you talking about?" "Family," Vivica said, her voice steady. "Things we should have talked about years ago." We stepped past them into the hallway. Party noise grew louder. Conversations, laughter, glasses clinking. From across the room, Ren's laugh cut through the noise. She was showing someone her new shoes, red velvet to match her dress, spinning so the fabric swirled. 7 years old, and untouched by the knowledge that her father was a thief and her grandmother a co-conspirator. That's why she had to leave before it happened. Why Vivica's signal mattered more than anything. Brent moved closer. His cologne was overwhelming, citrus and cedar, expensive like everything about him. When he spoke, his voice had an edge I'd never heard. "You two seem close all of a sudden." Lyle's hand settled on Brent's shoulder, firm, steadying, or restraining. I couldn't tell. But I could tell this. Lyle's hand tightened, and I realized with cold clarity that the lawyer wasn't here to help present documents. He was here because they'd moved up their timeline. I needed to stay calm, but calm became harder when I realized they knew something had changed. I was 3 steps from the kitchen when I heard my son-in-law's voice drop to a whisper that made my blood stop. "He knows something." Brent's voice came through the gap where the kitchen door stood ajar. "I can feel it." The way he looked at Lyle, the way Vivica pulled him aside. I stopped in the hallway. Guests were talking in the living room behind me, jazz playing softly, normal party sounds that had nothing to do with the conspiracy unfolding 15 feet ahead. Estelle's voice, lower, calmer. "He doesn't know anything. He never does. You're being paranoid." "Am I?" Brent's tone sharpened. His daughter hasn't spoken to him in 2 years. Suddenly tonight she shows up late, alone, pulls him into private conversation, and they come out looking like allies. That's not paranoid. That's pattern recognition. Silence. I could picture Estelle's face, the calculations running behind her eyes. "What do you want to do?" she asked finally. "We move at dessert, not after. At dessert. Before he has time to think. Before Vivica can warn him about anything. Before this night goes any direction except the one we planned." "And if he doesn't sign?" Brent's pause lasted 3 seconds. Then Lyle explains what happens to people who owe money they can't pay, how accidents happen, how houses burn down, how granddaughters get caught in fires. My hand found the wall, steadied myself. Every instinct told me to walk through that door immediately. But bursting in now would give Brent time to destroy the documents, time to call people I didn't want, time to run before Detective Garrett could position her officers. Ren was upstairs, safe, The officers were 3 houses down, 60 seconds away when I sent the signal. The fastest way to protect my granddaughter was to finish what I'd started. I had 2 choices: walk into that kitchen and end this now, or play the role a little longer. I chose the role. I walked forward, pushed the kitchen door open, and smiled. "Estelle, there you are," I said, voice cheerful, oblivious. "Estelle, are we serving dessert soon? Guests are asking." Estelle jumped. Actual physical startle. Her hand went to her chest. "Harland, I didn't. We were just discussing timing. I was thinking of making a toast before dessert. Something about family and gratitude, if that's all right with you." Brent finished smoothly, stepping forward with his practiced smile. He stood close, too close. I could smell his cologne again, see the calculation in his eyes. "Of course," I said. "Estelle deserves a proper toast." Exactly what I was thinking. Brent's smile didn't reach his eyes. Family takes care of family. That's what tonight's about. He walked past me, shoulder brushing mine, deliberate contact, establishing dominance, making sure I knew he was in control. Estelle recovered her composure, touched my arm. "Are you all right, honey? You look pale." "Fine, just hungry. Dinner's ready. Let's get everyone seated." We returned to the party. Guests migrated to the dining room. The table I'd built 30 years ago, set with china, we'd received as wedding gifts. Holding food meant to celebrate a woman who was helping steal everything I owned. I sat at the head, Estelle at the other end, Brent to my right, Lyle to my left, Vivica across from me, with Ren beside her. 12 people total, arranged like pieces on a board. Neither side controlled completely. Food was served, conversation started. I moved my fork, cut my chicken, pretended to eat. My hands gripped the plate so hard, my wedding ring cut into the adjacent finger. The pain was sharp, focusing, a reminder that I was still here, still performing, still in control, even though Brent had accelerated his timeline. The conversation flowed around me, a meaningless hum. I watched Brent, his eyes darting between Estelle and Lyle, a predator sensing its moment. I watched Vivica, her face a mask of calm, her hand resting protectively on Ren's arm. And I watched Estelle, her smile a little too wide, her laughter a little too loud. Then, Brent stood up, clinking his glass. "May I have everyone's attention, please?" The room quieted. "Tonight, we celebrate Estelle, a wonderful wife, mother, and grandmother. And we celebrate family, because family, above all else, takes care of family." He raised his glass. "To Estelle and to family." Everyone raised their glasses, including me. As I took a sip of wine, I subtly touched my left ear, twice. Vivica caught my eye, a quick, almost imperceptible nod. She stood, excusing herself and Ren to go upstairs, citing a sudden headache. Brent's eyes narrowed, but he couldn't object without drawing suspicion. "Now," Brent said, his gaze fixed on me, "I have a small matter of business to discuss. Harland, if you wouldn't mind joining me in the study for a moment?" This was it, the moment of truth. I pushed back my chair, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Of course, Brent." I walked into the study, Brent and Lyle following close behind. On my desk, a stack of documents, the estate planning papers. Brent picked up a pen, offering it to me with a flourish. "Just a formality, Harland. A simple transfer of assets to ensure Estelle is taken care of, should anything happen to you." I took the pen, my fingers trembling slightly. I looked at the papers, the bolded lines, the empty signature blocks. My life, my legacy, about to be signed away. "You know," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I was thinking about something Floyd said today, about how some things are just tacky." Brent's smile faltered. Lyle shifted uncomfortably. "And it made me think," I continued, "about loyalty, about trust, and about how some people, no matter how close they seem, are just not to be trusted." I looked directly at Brent. "You know, Brent, I've always admired your ambition, but I never realized it extended to stealing from your own family." His face went white. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fake invoices, the doctored receipts, the fabricated affair. I'm talking about trying to declare me incompetent, I'm talking about trying to steal everything I've built and destroy my relationship with my daughter in the process. Brent lunged for the papers, but I was faster. I snatched them, tearing them in half with a satisfying rip. These won't be necessary. You old fool, Brent roared, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. You're nothing. You're an old man, a relic. This company, this house, it's all ours. No, Brent, I said, my voice calm. It's not. I touched my right ear, a signal only Floyd and Detective Garrett knew. It's all mine. And you, my dear son-in-law, are under arrest. The study door burst open. Detective Garrett and two uniformed officers flooded the room. Brent and Lyle were stunned, their faces a mixture of shock and fury. Brent Townsend and Lyle Thompson, Detective Garrett announced, her voice crisp and authoritative, you're under arrest for attempted fraud, conspiracy, and coercion. Estelle, drawn by the commotion, appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of horror. Harland, what have you done? What I should have done 5 years ago, Estelle, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I protected what's mine. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, interrogations, and the painful unraveling of a life I thought I knew. Brent and Lyle were charged, their carefully constructed scheme exposed for the world to see. Estelle, implicated in the conspiracy, faced her own legal battles. The public humiliation was swift and brutal. Vivica, my brave, strong daughter, stood by my side through it all. We rebuilt our relationship, brick by painful brick, rediscovering the love and trust that had been stolen from us. Wren, shielded from the worst of it, slowly began to understand the truth about her father, a truth Vivica handled with grace and honesty. The company, Mercer Climate Solutions, was transferred to Vivica, where it belonged. She, with her integrity and sharp mind, would lead it into a new, honest future. The house, my home, remained mine, protected by a trust I'd established 6 months before that fateful birthday party. A few weeks later, I found myself back at Ashford Flowers. The shop bell chimed its familiar two-note greeting. Floyd looked up, a genuine smile gracing his face. Need any more roses, Harland? He asked, a twinkle in his eye. Just stopping by to say thank you, old friend, I said, a warmth spreading through me. You saved everything. Just $12 worth of roses, he said, shrugging. Best money you ever spent, I'd say. He was right. $12. That's all it cost me to stop them. To protect the house and the company and the relationship with my daughter and the ordinary mornings that were everything. $12 worth of roses I'd bought on a December afternoon, because that's what husbands did on wives' birthdays. I drove through the intersection, past the flower shop toward home, where an apple tree waited for pruning, and Saturday morning a 7-year-old expected pancakes. And Monday I'd probably get called about testimony dates for a federal trial I'd promised to attend. Life continuing. Not the life I'd planned, not the marriage I'd expected to carry into retirement, but life nonetheless transformed, and smaller and somehow larger than everything I'd almost lost. Betrayal doesn't always announce itself with warning signs. I trusted too easily. For 40 years, I believed loyalty and love were the same, that marriage meant partnership instead of performance. I handed my business to a man I barely knew because he said the right things at family dinners. Don't make my mistake. Trust isn't given freely just because someone married into your family. Trust is earned through actions that match words. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other kind because it comes from people who are supposed to protect you. When your own wife and son-in-law conspire against you, when family betrayal becomes your reality instead of something you hear about in stories, you learn that blood and marriage don't guarantee loyalty. But here's what I also learned. I walked into that flower shop at exactly the right moment. $12 worth of roses saved everything because life put me there when I needed to hear the truth, painful as it was. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you would have done differently, or share your own experience with family betrayal if you're comfortable. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it with them. Subscribe for more stories about standing up when the people closest to you try to tear you down. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time means more than you know.